First though, more than 20 years after the landmark Mabo decision, questions about compensation may soon be resolved. The tiny town of Timber Creek, near the Northern Territory's border with Western Australia, has become the site of a national test case. The federal court has been holding hearings in the remote community to determine how to best compensate traditional owners who've lost their native title rights. Avani Dias filed this report from Timber Creek.
Perched on a rock as the Timber Creek flows behind him, traditional owner Alan Griffiths is looking for the spirits of his ancestors. He sings out to them, and when the spirits arrive, he can welcome the newcomers, the federal court judge and lawyers to this land.
All for when he passed away, it might be gone, but his spirit stay back in the country. Everywhere like that, in Aboriginal way.
The Naliwuru and Noongar people call this place Gunama. It's the dingo dreaming site. But their rights to this special place have been lost because of this concrete bridge built for tourists. Their native title rights were extinguished when the government built on their land. The federal court is determining how to compensate traditional owners for the loss of those native title rights at this dreaming site and many other places in Timber Creek.
Sacred sites are important to us. It is the backbone of who we are. We are Aboriginal people. We walk this land, we live with this land, we died in this land. So we belong to the land.
The local Timber Creek basketball court has been transformed for 2 days of federal court proceedings. Court officials and lawyers have come by plane and then road to attend this sitting. Traditional owners told the court how infrastructure developments on sacred sites affects the community, particularly the Timber Creek Bridge.
What I'm feeling is very bad with that bridge. I'd like to see all that concrete come out of it. But it's important. You got dreaming right there.
The Naliwuru and Noongar people first applied for native title in 1999. 7 years later, they won native title rights in some parts of the town.
Real good. Got my country back.
Most of us will be that high, we won't be able to come back down for a couple of weeks.
A decade later, the fight has now turned to compensation.
I thought we finished when we won the title, and that's still gone.
While traditional owners were granted native title, some sites remained lost to them.
There's different ways that native title can be found to be extinguished or lost. So some examples might be where the Crown or the Territory builds a public work, like some infrastructure, sewerage infrastructure, power infrastructure, the basketball courts.
I think it's something that brings immense amounts of grief to Aboriginal people right around the country, and this notion of extinguishing native title is quite an abhorrent one.
The federal court has finished another week of sittings here in Darwin. Valuers have given evidence about how much the land in Timber Creek is worth in freehold terms. Although this case is dealing with relatively small areas of land, the consequences of its decision could multiply significantly when applied to much larger sites in other states and territories. The tiny town of Timber Creek is now set to make history.
The really significant thing about this case is it's the first time that we will have a judge talking about how you value native title.
It's very difficult to assess ahead of time the extent to which the cultural connection to land is going to be a factor, what kind of value you can put on that kind of cultural connection. On one sense, no money is enough, and in another sense, well, it's completely incapable of being valued because it's purely intangible.
Marshall McKenna is a native title lawyer in Western Australia who has represented both traditional owners and governments. He says one of the big effects on state, territory and federal governments will involve who pays compensation.
The native title system is, in a sense, user pays. Whoever does the act that affects native title is responsible for the compensation in relation to that act. That usually means the state or the territory, because while the Commonwealth has power to make grants, it doesn't regularly do that.
For the Naliwuru and Noongar people, this natural beauty is a manifestation of their ancestors and supernatural beings.
So there's different sites in different areas. They tell a different story of a specific animal. So the dreaming relates to an animal. But we got to remember that in the dream time, the animals were human. So they used to walk as like you and me.
Chris Griffith's father is one of the native title holders who originally brought the case against the Northern Territory government. Alan has been passing on knowledge to Chris about the special significance of the land.
He used to sing to me when I was a baby, till I was about 4. I used to wonder what he's singing to me, but he was actually singing to me about where the country runs.
Joe Morrison from the Northern Land Council says native title holders gain rights to access land for traditional ceremonies or hunting, but they don't actually gain a title under Australian law.
Conversations going on about giving Aboriginal people effectively title so they can then embark on empowerment but more importantly being able to gain some economic and other outcomes from the development of land by having title.
As the Territory and federal governments focus on developing the North, Mr Morrison is calling for governments to keep Aboriginal people's interests in mind.
Given the immense pressure on Aboriginal people to make decisions about third parties in northern development, I think we need to ask ourselves a question as a nation as to how we're going to, in fact, increase the prosperity of the people that have always lived here.
Timber Creek traditional owners believe there will be repercussions. They say spirits are released when land is destroyed, causing sickness and bad omens for the perpetrators. Money won't be enough to right the wrongs at Timber Creek, but traditional owners say compensation is still important recognition for their loss. The matter is due to finish in April, with sittings continuing throughout the year.
It opens the door for every other Indigenous Australian to have the chance to say, what did you do to my country? You took my country away from me. You built something on my land when I didn't want any infrastructure. You have to give me something back to replace what you took from me.